The story begins with a moment of tension as the flight attendant, named Karen, moves through the first-class cabin, scanning the passengers. Her eyes land on two young siblings, Tyler and Lily, sitting comfortably in their assigned seats. There is an immediate shift in Karen's demeanor, and something in her expression changes. Suspicion flickers across her face. Without any hesitation, she approaches them. Her voice is sharp and commanding as she demands that the siblings vacate their seats. Tyler, 17, blinks in confusion, while his younger sister, Lily, who is 12, remains silent, her eyes widening at the interaction. Tyler speaks up, trying to clarify, "But these are our seats." Their confusion is understandable, as they had booked these first-class tickets for the first time, something they were not accustomed to. Karen's response is cold and dismissive. "I don't think so," she snaps, implying that the siblings do not belong in such an exclusive area. The moment the siblings are questioned, the atmosphere in the cabin shifts. Other passengers start whispering, exchanging glances, but no one speaks up in their defense. Karen, seemingly satisfied with the challenge of asserting her authority, proceeds with her decision. She orders the siblings to move, leaving them no room to argue. As the siblings are forced to leave their seats, they have no idea that this encounter is more significant than a simple misunderstanding. Unbeknownst to Karen, Tyler and Lily's father, Mr. Holloway, is the owner of the airline. The casual assumption that these siblings do not belong in first class due to their age and appearance is about to backfire, but neither Karen nor the other passengers are aware of the ripple effect that this situation will soon have. Tyler and Lily, confused and humiliated, walk down the aisle, their excitement for the luxurious flight replaced with a growing sense of injustice. The flight attendant's judgment has set in motion a chain of events that neither the siblings nor Karen could have predicted. Karen has no idea that the consequences of her actions will soon be much greater than she could have ever imagined. As Tyler and Lily are escorted off the plane, their minds race with confusion and a sense of humiliation. The whispers of other passengers echo in the air as they walk down the aisle, feeling the weight of their discomfort in the silence that envelopes them. They had done nothing wrong, yet, here they were, being treated like troublemakers. The excitement they had once felt for their first-class experience is now gone, replaced by an overwhelming sense of injustice. Tyler pulls out his phone, hands trembling as he dials his father's number. His voice wavers slightly when his father answers. "Dad, they just kicked us off the plane," he says, his voice full of disbelief. On the other end of the line, Mr. Holloway's voice turns cold, his tone instantly hardening. "Which flight are you on?" he demands. Tyler's heart races as he explains, unaware that this simple call will soon change the course of everything. Meanwhile, Karen, the flight attendant, stands by the gate, feeling a strange sense of satisfaction. She is convinced that she was simply following the rules, though there's an unsettling feeling building inside her. She doesn't fully understand why the siblings are being so difficult, but in her mind, the decision was justified. As she watches Tyler and Lily stand outside the plane, security keeping a close eye on them, she remains unaware of the storm brewing just beneath the surface. The intercom crackles, summoning Karen to the front desk. As she approaches, she tries to maintain her usual composure, smoothing down the front of her uniform. But the moment she steps into the office, she's met by the cold gaze of Mr. Denton, a senior airline executive. "Did you verify their tickets first, or did you assume?" he asks, his voice sharp. Karen's mind races for an answer, but before she can speak, Mr. Denton cuts her off, his disappointment evident. The tension grows thick, and Karen's pride is beginning to falter. She had made a decision based on assumptions, and now she is facing the reality of her mistake. She had acted without considering the full picture, and soon, she would realize the gravity of her actions. It was no longer just about rules or procedures, it was about power, consequences, and accountability. As she stands there, trying to explain herself, Karen feels the weight of what she has done begin to sink in. The situation is far from over, and her actions are about to have a much greater impact than she ever anticipated. As Tyler and Lily sit on the cold bench outside the gate, their confusion deepens. The humiliation of being kicked off the plane is palpable, and they can hardly process what has happened. They had been excited to experience first class, to enjoy a level of comfort they had never known, only for it to be stripped away in an instant. A uniformed security officer watches them closely, but not a single passenger says anything. The silence from the crowd feels like a heavy weight, and the sting of exclusion is unbearable. Tyler continues to stare at his phone, his hands shaking as he waits for his father to pick up. The call finally connects, and he quickly explains the situation, his voice laced with frustration. "Dad, they just kicked us off. They said we don't belong in first class," Tyler says, barely able to control the anger in his voice. The silence on the other end is brief, but the gravity of it hits Tyler hard when his father, Mr. Holloway, finally responds. "Which flight are you on?" His voice has hardened, and Tyler can hear the wheels turning as his father processes the severity of the situation. While Tyler and Lily wait outside, Karen walks briskly to the front desk, unaware that her world is about to be turned upside down. She smooths her uniform one last time, trying to calm the rising anxiety in her chest. She was just doing her job, wasn't she? But now, in the harsh light of scrutiny, Karen's conviction falters. As she arrives at the desk, Mr. Denton, the senior executive, gives her a sharp look before speaking. "Did you verify their tickets before making your decision, or did you assume?" His voice is direct, and for the first time, Karen feels the full weight of her mistake. Before she can answer, Mr. Denton sighs, rubbing his forehead. Karen's sense of control begins to slip away as she tries to explain her actions. She stammers, but there is no defense that can undo what she has done. The reality of her situation sets in. Her mistake was far more than a mere oversight, it was a misjudgment that was about to cost her far more than just her confidence. As she waits for further instructions, Karen realizes that her actions have set off a chain of events, and she is now facing the consequences of her assumptions. The tension is thick, and Karen knows that the fallout from her decision is only beginning. She has no idea how deeply her mistake will impact her career, but one thing is certain, this is only the beginning. As Karen approaches the front of the plane, she can feel the weight of the passengers' eyes on her. She can hear the murmurs, the hushed whispers that trail in her wake. The sharp sting of judgment is unlike anything she has ever experienced. She moves forward, her posture stiff, trying to maintain the composure she had prided herself on. But something has shifted. The authority she once held over this cabin is slipping through her fingers like sand. She stops at Tyler and Lily's row. She knows what she has to do, but the words feel like they are stuck in her throat. She has to apologize. It's the only thing left to do. Her carefully composed voice wavers slightly as she addresses them. I owe you both an apology," Karen says, her tone strained and uncomfortable. It's a hollow apology, one that she knows will never undo the harm she has caused, but it's all she can offer. Lily looks up at Karen, her expression guarded. "Would you have done the same thing if we looked different?" she asks, her voice soft but sharp with a quiet resentment that catches Karen off guard. the question lingers in the air between them, heavier than any apology. It's not an accusation, but a simple inquiry, a probe into Karen's own biases that she cannot ignore. Karen's throat tightens. She wants to respond, to justify her actions, but she knows deep down that the question has already answered itself. She knows the answer, but she is too afraid to admit it out loud. Tyler, who has been silent throughout the exchange, turns his eyes to Karen. "You didn't think we belonged here, did you?" he asks quietly, but there's no anger in his voice. There's only a sense of knowing, a quiet recognition that he and his sister had been treated differently. The silence stretches on, thick and uncomfortable. Karen stands there, exposed, as her mind races for a response, but no words come. She's been caught in the act, and she knows there is no excuse for what she has done. As she stands in front of Tyler and Lily, the realization hits her like a ton of bricks. This is not just about the flight or the seating. This is about something much deeper. This is about who gets to belong, who gets to have a voice, and who gets to be treated with respect. And in that moment, Karen realizes she has failed them. She has failed herself. The walk back to the galley feels different. It's no longer the same confident stride she had before. This time, every step is heavy, burdened with the weight of her mistake. Every eye in the cabin seems to be watching her, waiting for her to prove herself. But she knows that this moment cannot be undone. She's already lost their trust, and in that, she has lost something far more important. The flight continues its journey, but the atmosphere on board has shifted. Karen feels the weight of every gaze on her, the tension in the cabin palpable. The once confident stride she had as she moved through the aisles is now reduced to a hesitant shuffle. As she serves drinks and adjusts tray tables, she can feel the stares, the silent judgment, hanging in the air like an unspoken cloud. Her actions earlier have made her a target, and now, there's no escape from the consequences. Lily and Tyler remain seated, their expressions unreadable. Karen tries to maintain her composure, but every glance in their direction feels like a reminder of the mistake she made. As she walks past their row, she can feel the discomfort radiating from them, and it cuts deeper than anything the passengers have said. The apology was insufficient, a mere formality that couldn't undo the damage done. Her mind races, trying to find some justification for her actions, but she knows there's none. She had assumed, based solely on their appearance, that Tyler and Lily didn't belong in first class. She had judged them, and now she must face the consequences. The silence between them during her apology only underscores the truth. Her behavior wasn't just a misunderstanding. It was rooted in bias, in assumptions she had made without ever giving them a chance. As Karen moves back to the galley, she can feel the weight of the situation sinking in. The hum of the engines and the chatter of the other flight attendants blur into the background. All she can think about is Darius Holloway, the man who owns the airline. The name had echoed in her mind since the moment she realized who Tyler and Lily's father was. His presence is now a looming shadow, and she knows that what she did has reached much higher than the passengers or her colleagues. She's made a mistake that could cost her more than just her job. It could cost her the very career she's worked so hard to build. Karen tries to steady herself, but the anxiety gnaws at her. She knows she's on borrowed time. The flight continues, but every minute that passes feels like a countdown to a reckoning she's not prepared for. The passengers are silent, but she can feel their judgment. She has failed them, and she has failed herself. Now, all she can do is wait for what's coming next. The flight continues its descent toward the airport, but for Karen, every moment feels like a lifetime. Her anxiety is palpable, her heart pounding in her chest. She tries to focus on the tasks at hand, ensuring the cabin is secure for landing, but the weight of her earlier actions hangs over her like a dark cloud. As she makes her rounds, checking on the passengers, she can't escape the looks they give her, the silent judgment that follows her every step. Tyler and Lily sit quietly in their seats, their demeanor unchanged, but Karen can't help but feel their presence more than ever. The silence between them is deafening. They don't look at her directly, but she can sense that they're waiting for something to happen, for something to be done, but mostly, they're waiting for Karen to understand the gravity of her mistake. She's humiliated them, and in return, they've given her nothing but calm and composure. As Karen walks through the aisle, she hears murmurs from the other passengers, whispers of what happened, of the mistake she made. Some of them are curious, others simply watching the unfolding drama, but there's one thing she knows for sure: everyone is aware. She feels small, insignificant, and completely exposed under their scrutiny. The shame is almost suffocating. In the cockpit, the captain's voice crackles through the intercom, signaling the approach to the airport. Karen's hands tremble as she grips the seatbelt, trying to steady her nerves. Her mind races, replaying the moments when she first made the decision to question Tyler and Lily's seats. It was a decision fueled by arrogance, a decision she now regrets deeply. She wishes she could undo it, but she knows she can't. The consequences are already set in motion, and there's nothing she can do to stop it. The sound of footsteps behind her catches her attention. She doesn't need to turn around to know it's one of the airline executives. The walk is deliberate, calculated. She feels the weight of their presence before they even speak. As she steps into the galley, she is met with the unmistakable figure of Darius Holloway. The man who owns the airline, the man whose children she humiliated in front of an entire cabin. His gaze is cold, unwavering. Karen can feel the weight of his eyes on her as he steps closer, his presence alone sending a chill down her spine. This is it. The moment she's been dreading. "You made a mistake, Karen," Darius says, his voice calm but laced with authority. "And now, we deal with the consequences." Karen swallows hard, knowing this is far from over. She's about to face the wrath of the man whose children she mistreated, and there's no escaping the judgment that awaits her. The flight finally touches down at the airport, and Karen's heart races in her chest. The sounds of the plane's descent, the whirring of the engines, and the light chatter around her do nothing to calm the storm brewing inside her. She glances at Tyler and Lily, sitting quietly in their seats, their calm demeanor in stark contrast to the storm Karen is fighting inside. They are still composed, unwavering, while Karen's anxiety continues to mount. As the plane comes to a halt, the usual bustle of passengers preparing to disembark fills the cabin, but for Karen, it feels different. The familiar routine of unbuckling seatbelts and gathering belongings seems far removed from the tension she's carrying. She hears whispers of what happened earlier, passengers whispering about the scene, the forced removal of Tyler and Lily, and the silence that followed. Karen feels their eyes on her as she moves up and down the aisle, trying to act normal, but she knows the truth: nothing will ever be normal again after today. Her thoughts are interrupted when she sees two security officers step into the cabin. Their presence is a sharp reminder that things are about to get real. They're here for her. Their eyes meet hers, and for the first time, Karen's usual sense of control slips away. She knows what's coming, and the weight of the moment presses heavily on her shoulders. The passengers watch her, some out of curiosity, others with clear judgment in their eyes, but none of them are speaking. It's as if they are all waiting for the final moment. Tyler and Lily remain seated, their heads held high. Their silence speaks volumes. There's no need for them to defend themselves. They already know who they are. Karen, on the other hand, feels smaller than she ever has before. She tries to steady her breath, but the tightness in her chest only grows. The security officers approach her, their faces unreadable. They don't say a word, but their presence is enough. One of the officers steps forward and speaks, his tone cold and professional. "Miss Calloway, please come with us. You're needed at the front desk immediately." Karen feels the eyes of the entire cabin on her as she follows the officers toward the front. Each step feels heavier, and she can't escape the feeling that she's walking toward her downfall. The passengers still watch, but now they aren't just silent observers. They are witnesses to her fall from grace. She reaches the front, her mind racing, knowing that what happens next will determine the course of her career, and possibly her future in the airline industry. The tense silence in the terminal is almost unbearable as Karen approaches the front desk. The security officers flank her, their presence a constant reminder that she is no longer in control of the situation. She feels as though the eyes of everyone in the airport are on her, some watching with curiosity, others with judgment. But none of them speak. It's as if the weight of the moment is too heavy for anyone to break. As she steps into the small room where the airline's executives are waiting, she notices the stiff, formal atmosphere. The air feels thick, as though everyone knows exactly why she's there but is pretending otherwise. Karen stands there, trying to keep her composure, but every nerve in her body is on edge. She knows that this moment is where her fate will be decided. The executives are seated around a table, their faces stoic and impassive. They don't say anything at first, and Karen feels like they are all waiting for her to speak, to explain herself. But she doesn't know what to say. How could she explain what happened? How could she justify her actions when they were driven by assumptions and bias? She was simply doing her job, or so she thought. Finally, one of the executives, a tall man in his late 50s, speaks. His voice is calm, but there's an unmistakable sharpness to it. "Miss Calloway, we have received a complaint about your conduct. You forced 2 passengers off the plane based on nothing but an assumption. Do you have an explanation for that?" Karen's heart races, and she opens her mouth to speak, but no words come out. How could she explain what she was thinking when she made that decision? She didn't see them as passengers. She saw them as something else entirely. Something that didn't belong in first class. But now, the full weight of her mistake crashes down on her. The man continues, his tone colder than before. "You didn't just make a mistake, Miss Calloway. You humiliated those children, and you acted out of prejudice. What do you have to say for yourself?" Before Karen can respond, the door opens, and a new figure steps into the room. It's Darius Holloway, the airline's owner. Karen's breath catches in her throat. She had no idea he was involved in this. He stands there, silent but commanding, his gaze sweeping across the room before landing on her. He doesn't need to say anything. His presence alone is enough to make Karen realize just how badly she's misjudged everything. The weight of the situation is no longer just professional, it's personal. Darius Holloway's children, the ones she treated so poorly, are the reason she's here. And now, she has to face the consequences of her actions. The tension in the air grows thicker with every passing second as Karen stands in the small, sterile room, facing Darius Holloway and the airline executives. She knows, deep down, that her career is hanging by a thread. The quiet but palpable weight of the moment settles heavily on her shoulders. The once confident flight attendant who prided herself on controlling every situation now feels small and powerless. The voices that had once commanded respect now seem to drown in the silence that fills the room. Darius Holloway, the airline's owner, stands at the head of the table, his presence dominating the space. He doesn't speak right away, but his piercing gaze locks onto Karen, making her skin prickle with unease. She can feel the fire of his judgment, and she knows that the consequences of her actions are about to come crashing down. After a long, suffocating pause, Darius finally speaks. His voice is calm, but there's an underlying edge to it that sends a chill down Karen's spine. "You've made a grave mistake, Karen," he says, his words deliberate and measured. "You didn't just treat 2 children poorly. You insulted the integrity of this airline and everything we stand for. Do you understand that?" Karen opens her mouth to speak, to apologize, but the words don't come. There's nothing she can say to undo the damage. She had acted based on assumptions, without regard for the real truth, and now she's facing the consequences. Darius doesn't wait for a response. Instead, he continues, his tone unwavering. "The Holloway family is an integral part of this airline. The children you humiliated, Amari and Zir, are my own. And you didn't just make a mistake in judgment. You disrespected my family, and that's something that can't be overlooked." The gravity of his words settles into the room, and Karen's stomach sinks. She had no idea who she was dealing with, no idea that the siblings she had kicked off the plane were related to the very man who held her career in his hands. Her ignorance had cost her everything. Darius turns his gaze to the executives, giving them a silent command to proceed. One of them, a middle-aged woman with steely eyes, nods and stands. "Karen Calloway, effective immediately, you are placed on administrative leave. This will be followed by an official investigation into your conduct. I trust you understand the seriousness of this." Karen nods numbly, her chest tightening as she stands there, her mind reeling. She had once been the one who held the power over others. But now, in a cruel twist of fate, she's the one who's powerless. As she's escorted out of the room, she knows that she'll never be the same. The moment she crossed the line with Amari and Zir Holloway, she sealed her own fate. Her career was over. The plane touches down, and the reality of the situation finally begins to set in for Karen. She walks slowly down the aisle, her head held low, her movements mechanical. The weight of her downfall feels like a physical burden, the passengers' gazes following her every step. It's as if the entire plane is watching her, waiting for her to slip up or react. She doesn't meet their eyes. Instead, she focuses on the path ahead, the echo of her past actions now a heavy reminder of how far she's fallen. As she reaches the jet bridge, she's met by 2 security officers. Their expressions are unreadable, but Karen can feel their presence like a suffocating fog. She knows they are there to escort her, not as a colleague, but as a person who has been deemed unworthy of even being in the same space. The humiliation is almost too much to bear, and every step toward the terminal feels like it's leading her further into her own self-doubt and regret. She can't help but replay everything that led to this moment, the first confrontation with Amari and Zir, the way she had assumed they didn't belong in first class, the decision to act without thinking. Now, everything is so painfully clear. She had judged them not for who they were, but for what she thought they weren't. Her arrogance and assumptions had cost her everything she had worked for. As they reached the terminal, Karen is led to a small waiting area. The security officers stand by, keeping a respectful distance, but Karen feels their watchful eyes on her. She pulls out her phone, her hands trembling as she stares at the screen. She's received several messages from colleagues and friends, but she can't bring herself to read them. The realization of what she's lost sinks in deeper with each passing second. It's then that her phone buzzes again, and this time it's from her supervisor, confirming the finality of the decision. The message is short, to the point: your employment with the airline has been terminated. Please return your uniform and badge to HR immediately. The words sting, and Karen fights the urge to cry. This wasn't just about losing a job, it was about losing everything she had built up over the years. The respect she had once commanded, the authority she had relied on, it was all gone now. All because she made a rash decision. As she stands there, waiting for the next step, the thought crosses her mind: was it worth it? She's already certain of the answer. The answer is no. She only hopes that, in time, she will learn the valuable lesson that authority, when misused, leads to nothing but regret. Karen's walk through the terminal feels endless, but she knows it's just the beginning of her new reality. The story of Karen's actions aboard the flight offers a powerful lesson in humility, bias, and the consequences of assumptions. When Karen, a flight attendant, assumed that two young siblings did not belong in first class based on their appearance, she acted out of a preconceived notion, without verifying the facts. This quick judgment led to the humiliation of Tyler and Lily, a decision that soon spiraled into the unraveling of Karen's career. What she didn't know was that the siblings' father owned the airline, and her decision would set off a chain of events that would expose her prejudice and lack of consideration. This moment highlights how harmful assumptions can be, and how they can cloud our judgment and actions. As Karen faces the consequences of her actions, it becomes clear that the weight of bias can destroy trust, relationships, and even one's career. The story urges us to reflect on our own judgments. How often do we assume we know someone's place based on their appearance or background? The consequences of such biases may not always be as immediately apparent as Karen's, but they can still create rifts and harm others deeply. It reminds us that humility, patience, and verification are essential in our interactions, especially when dealing with power dynamics. It also teaches that true accountability isn't just about acknowledging mistakes, it's about rectifying them with genuine understanding. Karen's journey shows that we must be mindful of the assumptions we make in our daily lives and how they affect others. It's a reminder that integrity and empathy are vital in maintaining respect and dignity for all. If you enjoyed this lesson, please like, subscribe, and ring the bell to stay updated on more insightful stories.